Welcome. I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts designed to improve your management skills and grow your business. I always remind you at the beginning of the videos to go ahead and pause, hit that space bar, pause the video, grab a notepad, grab a pen, because I want you to jot down something of use, something that you get and take away that you can implement in your business today. That's the goal of all this. We're going to implement things in the business, drive progress. Okay, so today I wanted to share with you a story. I wanted to relay an anecdote, an experience I had, a conversation with a major stakeholder and co-founder of a business. And she was asking me for some expert advice on a situation that had arisen in the business. And I obtained permission to go ahead and record a video that may contain some ideas that others in any kind of business can take away and implement from the same advice that I was extending to that person. So the situation was, there's healthcare, they operate in the healthcare industry, and the practice operates as part of a larger facility that has multiple disciplines, multiple types of healthcare practitioners. And the person who operates the overarching, the umbrella facility, came to the people that operated one portion of it, one particular discipline of healthcare, and said that she had been approached by somebody who wanted to become involved, another doctor who wanted to join the practice. And the person speaking with me, who, as I mentioned, operates only within one of the disciplines throughout the whole umbrella facility, was not sure whether that was a good decision or not and wanted my input, wanted me to weigh in. And I said, okay, well, let's start. And by the way, she started giving me details about this person's credentials, good and bad. And I said, just hold on a second here. I'm not interested in those yet. Those will be relevant details eventually in the conversation, perhaps, but not yet. The first thing I wanted to establish was the organizational nature and how the remuneration flowed within their business arrangement. So as I mentioned a moment ago, there is an overarching healthcare facility that is operated by one primary stakeholder who has other doctors that operate practices of a different discipline. So you've seen this before, and it's not uncommon in the healthcare industry that you perhaps would have a healthcare facility that houses both a medical doctor, family physician, a physiotherapist, massage therapy, chiropractic, maybe dental. And it's very common in our market to have that kind of thing. So this particular person was approached by a doctor who wanted to practice with one of the subletting, we'll say, one of the businesses further down in the hierarchy, so to speak. And my first question was, why did this doctor approach that person? If he wanted to work for you, why didn't he approach you? And the answer was a little hazy, unclear. It was vague because there was some assumptions made. Well, I guess he knew that she was the overarching facility manager and went to her. And I said, okay, well, but who would he actually work for? And the answer was clear. Well, he would work for our practice. Okay. And so he should really be talking to you. You need to scrutinize your team members, especially the doctors within a healthcare facility that are going to work and uphold your brand and look after your patients. So I think we have to stop there. And the first advice I want to give you is you need to draw some boundaries, define some boundaries between you and your partner that operates the overarching facility, that should an opportunity like this come up in the future, that she would defer inquiries directly to you. If somebody wants to work for your business, then they should be referred to talk to you directly, and your business partner who doesn't really run your business but has a financial arrangement with you should not engage in those conversations. I inquired, did this person, let's call it the general manager of the facility, did this person decide on her own that there is a greater revenue opportunity by adding a doctor to your or other practices, and in doing so, it would be a win-win for all? And is that the reason that she approached you? And it was unclear to the person I was speaking with whether that was the case or not. But it didn't really matter, because if we say for the sake of argument that was the case, then she should have come directly to you and discussed that and said, hey, I think there's an opportunity we're missing out here. Our capacities are limited with the existing healthcare providers. Why don't we take a look at adding more? And what will that look like? And discuss it among the stakeholders. Really, that's about an alignment of objectives. And as I go through this anecdote, by the way, and I'm going to allude to several different management principles. These are the types of things you can use as heuristics to make decisions. But we will either put little cards up in the corner when I allude to those things to the extent that YouTube allows. I think there's only 5 allowed per video. So in the description of this video, we'll add all the rest. And there's a lot of these things that you can pick up individually. So the first point I made was about boundaries. And I don't believe we have a video on boundaries, but that was the first one. Was this person and you don't seem to have good boundaries, because she probably didn't think she was doing anything wrong discussing adding a person to your business, but there's a conflict of interest there. And so the first thing you need to do, stop the presses and call a meeting and forget about the decision whether to add someone or not, and have a meeting regarding boundaries. And it may go something like, just some of the word tracks might be something like, hey, thank you very much for the referral, and that's something I'll definitely consider. And then you could start asking some questions about how it came to be, what were the logistical steps that were taken to get us to this point, and then define the boundary in a non-emotional, very straightforward way, saying, going forward, if you have an idea that you think will improve my business, either with my staff or with me directly, would you do me a favor and come to me directly? And let's book a meeting and let's discuss those things. Or alternatively, if somebody from outside the organization approaches you and they pitch an idea that they might be a fit for my portion of the business, would you say to them, well, that's strictly up to me, and refer them to me as opposed to engaging in the conversation at that point? We shouldn't be putting any effort into it at that point. It should be deferred to until such time as I can have that conversation with them. So that was the very first piece of advice I gave. And I said, I think, because we haven't got to the crux of what you're really asking, is this a good financial decision for you? You may be inclined to overlook this piece of advice. Don't. This may be one of the most important pieces of advice, because things will come up in the future. And you need to define boundaries. That's the first thing you need to understand in that relationship. You have other stakeholders. You have a business partner of sorts. And in this hierarchical arrangement, she acts as somewhat as a boss, somewhat as a landlord, somewhat as a business partner. And you need to define your boundaries around those things, so as these things come up in the future, you will operate without conflicts of interest. And that is the first place we can start. So if I gave you no other advice on this situation, you could go away with a better business, with a more improved relationship. And I can promise you that will rear its head again if you don't do this. So make a note to do this first. So that was the first piece of advice. And the person seeking the advice from me said, the only reason I could see to do it would be that we'd make more money. And I said, okay, that's not immediately apparent to me. So let's explore that. first of all, you need to understand, what are your objectives? What is the objective of your business? And I said, begin with the end in mind. One of the 7 habits of highly effective people. You need to understand what the objectives are of your business, you and your business partners and your primary stakeholders within this healthcare practice. What are your objectives? And let's say, for the sake of argument, for this discussion, that it's strictly to make more money. It never is. Money is a means to an end, and it's likely to be that you may want to afford yourself freedom and autonomy of schedule and have good feelings inside by helping other people, by helping patients, and so on. But let's say, to make it easy, that it's about money. Is this decision going to lead to more money? And the next principle that I want you as a listener to take away from this is, see, what I'm doing here is I'm asking questions, I'm exploring, and the person seeking advice from me sometimes has and has not considered the answers to the questions that I'm posing. And by having to answer to me, by having to answer these questions, it causes you to think. And so this is a really important part of evaluating business. And it may sound like there's nothing magical here and it's not rocket science. It's all about slowing down and making good decisions in your business. That's what management's about, and that's how you'll grow your business. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary are small things applied with discipline, habitually, day in and day out, and that improve your brand and improve your business, improve the value of your business. So start by analyzing. And the first thing I wanted to know was, what are the objectives of the business? Is one of them to make money? Of course it is. And so let's go with that one for now. Will the addition of this person add money? And then what had to ensue from that point was a bit of a discussion about the financial arrangement between the one practitioner and the umbrella facility. And in this particular case, there's an arrangement where a percentage of all the revenue made by the subletting, we'll call it, practice, a percentage of that revenue flows up. And in exchange for that, there is some expenses that are handled, and they pool some resources, facility as an example, and maybe some front-end staff such as reception. Whereas the subletting business still has its own staff and its own healthcare practitioners and its own equipment, by the arrangement that they had a certain percentage of a certain percentage of revenue just automatically flowed up to the overarching healthcare facility. And so the comment that was made to me is that, well, it's kind of obvious, if this new doctor was able to generate any revenue whatsoever, then a portion of that revenue flows up to the overarching facility, and a portion of that revenue is maintained by this doctor, and there would be extra revenue for us, for our practice. And I said, okay, well, maybe you can see automatically. And the objection that was given me is that it's just not that much. By the time we pay the overarching facility and the new doctor, there won't be much left over for us. I said, but is it new revenue? Is it rather not new revenue? Is it incremental growth of revenue? And it seems on the surface you might think, yes, it is, because the person has to generate their own business, generate their own patients. And so I challenged that notion a little bit. I said, is it possible that the new doctor could cannibalize some of the existing market, some of the business that you would otherwise get? And you have to ask yourself that in this situation. So again, it's about slowing down and asking the questions. And you could have an arrangement where the new doctor was not going to be able to compete, so to speak. He would not be able to take on patients that already exist within the practice. And there's some different ways of wording that, and there are some things that in practical terms work well and don't work as well. But let's say for the sake of argument, that was part of the contractual arrangement. Then you would say, well, he's not cannibalizing any of our existing business, but could he cannibalize some of the future business, incoming business? And the answer was yes, theoretically. But again, there's no way of knowing or measuring that, knowing exactly if it happens or how often it happens or quantifying it. And so the next thing I said is, well, then let's define the market. Could you tell me about how big this market is? Do you think that it's a really sort of a saturated market, or is there lots of opportunity? You could, if you had the capacities, that you could continue to grow and grow and grow. And the answer was the latter. Yes, there's lots of people, there's lots of prospective patients in the area, and given time and the right resources and expanding capacities, we could grow. The next question I asked was, okay, so the existing doctor operating at this facility, is he satisfied with his level of business, or is he aggressively trying to grow? And the answer was, actually, he's pretty satisfied with the income he's making. And if the business maintained its current level of volume, patient volume and revenues, that it's pretty good. It's satisfying the financial needs of the practice and accomplishing that objective. And so I said, okay, well, we go back to the objective then. So it sounds like you're already accomplishing your financial objective. So now I understand your comment where you said the only reason to do it would be more money. And as they say, more money, more problems. So you might be concerned about what other problems does this cause? And would it actually have the potential to disrupt the revenue that you are currently receiving? And so let's look at what are some other objectives you have? And the other thing that came up was, well, the flexibility of scheduling and the autonomy. And I asked about the scheduling, the doctor's schedule. There's already 2 physicians operating in this particular practice. This one would be adding a 3rd within the one practice, not counting the overarching facility, the other operations. And I said, so you're saying that his schedule is as busy as he wants it right now, but he could expand the hours of the practice and take on more business, and there would be business for these other doctors. And the answer was yes. It sounds like, okay. It sounds like there is an opportunity here. If you have demand that exceeds your existing capacities and you're not expanding your capacities because your financial objectives are met, now you can understand where that general manager of the overarching facility is seeing an opportunity. Why don't we expand our capacity within your operation? Because it's identifiable to stakeholders who are observing and seeing there is more opportunity to expand the number of hours, expand the number of doctors, and maybe the equipment availability, maybe the space that's being used, have potential to increase the capacity and drive more revenues up to that other stakeholder, that overarching general manager, and that the overall facility. So I think it was important that you consider that. And how can you align objectives again? How can you make it so that person is getting what she wants, and then you can get what you want out of your business? So if you're already, so what we want to do is we want to preserve your income, because you're mostly satisfied, and not that you would turn away extra income if it was available to you, but you want to preserve your income, but you may want some more autonomy in terms of your schedule and flexibility. Can we set up a situation where you have a more passive income, where you may be able to work in a succession plan and retirement, where over time you work fewer and fewer hours, but you don't have a proportional decrease in the revenue and the profit you're able to extract from the practice? And that sounded good. That's like, well, that's ideal. Okay, great. So it sounds like now we have the answer to our question, which is yes, we should absolutely be considering adding another doctor, another practitioner to this part of the practice. But the discussion is not over yet, because I take it back full circle. and say, but we don't necessarily want to add the person who's been proposed to us. That's another matter entirely. What we want to do always when you're looking at your business is you want to take advantage of the lowest hanging fruit. You want to maximize the greatest opportunities. So if you say this is, let's say for the sake of argument, this is the greatest opportunity to fulfill objectives we have. We can preserve our income and we can get more flexibility and we can do some succession planning, some retirement planning, and maybe generate some passive income, all the while aligning objectives with our other stakeholder, the overarching facility, healthcare practitioner, general manager. And so it sounds like we're on the right track, but in order to make the best use of this opportunity, we now need to make sure that we choose the very best candidate. The people operating within your business are so critical. It's so important, especially in the healthcare field. And I said, you probably have a whole list of things in your mind about what the ideal candidate would be. And we need to put that down. What is the ideal healthcare practitioner? What does he or she look like? What will that person, what boxes will they check off? And we have videos about human resources and creating a profile. We don't want to make a square peg fit a round hole. So just because somebody has already approached us and said, hey, I'm interested in that, that is where a lot of business managers and owners make the mistake, is just because an opportunity presents itself and it sounds good, like we just agreed, hey, this is an opportunity. But you have to go back and ask, is this the best way to maximize that opportunity? And in the example that I'm giving is like, well, we want the very best doctor to fill that role. The person who is going to align objectives with our practice and all the other stakeholders, as well as somebody who will uphold our brand and help build the practice entirely. If you put somebody in just because the opportunity presents itself, and I'm saying this person could even be a very good healthcare practitioner. This person could be a great doctor and be a very nice guy. But if he has completely different aspirations and it doesn't fit, it doesn't align well with your objectives, then you're going to run into conflict. And so that's why you have to create a profile of what the ideal candidate is for this specific instance. Like if this was a brand new practice opening from scratch with no doctors, that might be a completely different profile of who you're looking for to run that. Maybe that person should have some management skills. Maybe that person should be very aggressively trying to grow the business. Whereas in this case, maybe you're looking for someone who practices in a couple locations and is only looking for part-time in this location. I'm not sure. That was what I sent this person back to go and explore. Who is the ideal candidate? What does it look like? And answer those questions before entertaining. And I advised, I wouldn't even interview this person at first. I would say, we are interested, because you kind of got to get back to the person. So you had that meeting regarding boundaries. And it sounds like something we should pursue, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out the opportunity for anyone to apply for, and we will consider this candidate along with everyone else. And the very best candidate, that candidate which most closely matches the profile that we create, will be the one that we select. The next principle in our discussion, in the advice I was giving, was, it occurred to me, I'm giving you some HR advice, and maybe HR is not where you shine. Maybe some of the pieces of advice I'm giving you are not your strengths, they're weaknesses. In fact, have you had staff in your practice before that wasn't working out? Maybe you hired too much in a rush, or you didn't take the time, whatever it is. And if you identify that HR is not your strength, then perhaps you should allow us to do it for you. You should have somebody else look after hiring, finding the candidate. So if we, for the sake of argument, make the decision, if you decide, yes, we do want to pursue another doctor for this facility, then it becomes a question of, well, who's the right person and who's going to find that person? you can make the final decision, but maybe a company like mine should actually put the candidates in front of you, and we should screen them and create the profile. So the concept here is that you should take away as a listener is stick to your strengths. If you can take this kind of advice, but then you realize, well, I'm now going into something that I don't deal well with. I messed this up. I don't have any aspirations to get better at this part of the business. That's okay. That's advice that I give. Stick to your strengths. Let somebody else delegate the work to a third party like myself to handle the things that are not your strengths, because we shine in being able to find good talent and know how to develop those profiles and so on. So, and there were a few other things, that conversation about boundaries. Do you need somebody else to be involved in that? Are you good with that kind of conversation? Can you handle it? Or do you need some help in organizing the meeting? Just sort of someone to hold you accountable to getting it done. These types of things are about organization and sticking to what you do best. And if what you do best is patient interaction and healthcare practicing, then maybe that's what you should stick to and let us do the other parts of it for you. As the conversation continued, I asked a few other questions regarding the contractual arrangement between the overarching facility management and the subletting practice, and how they came up. Is it fair? Is the remuneration agreement fair? And what sort of things are built in there? And then also, as I mentioned earlier in this video, there's already another doctor. There's two doctors operating in the subletting practice. And what are the contractual obligations between the second doctor and the co-founding doctor who manages that facility? And so there are, of course, remuneration agreements. Exactly the numbers are spelled out. And it occurred to us in this conversation that the risks inherent in taking on a third doctor with, like I said, making sure that they don't cannibalize future market and they don't damage the brand of the practice or something like that, are significant enough that you want to make sure that you have a commensurate financial win to offset that. And that led us to the discussion of the contractual arrangement and how does the money flow and all that kind of stuff. And what do we have in writing? And the bottom line there was, well, there are two things. One, probably for adding another doctor, there's a disproportionate financial win and low risk for the overarching general management facility operator. In other words, she will win the most financially and she has very little to lose. And the person taking on the extra doctor takes on a lot more of the management of that and the logistics of that and the risk of how that affects his practice. And so that original arrangement, which they have used for when the first doctor opened the practice underneath the umbrella practice, probably is not fair for more to come in. And so in that discussion, you could renegotiate those terms and say, well, we'll keep the terms that we have between you and me and how much of my revenue you get for patients I see. But when we add other associates and more doctors, since I take on the risk and responsibility of those, I need to retain a greater part of that revenue. So that was the first point, is that you need to consider that and renegotiate those terms. Secondly was, what about the various contracts between stakeholders, whether it's the general manager, the subletting facility, or the doctors that operate within the sublet. And each of those contractual arrangements need to protect the objectives of your business. And what are those? You don't want to be ousted. You don't want to be kicked out where these other doctors go around you and start negotiating directly with your landlord, so to speak. And do you have a non-compete clause in there? And what sort of contractual arrangements have you made to protect yourself and your business? If you go through all the work of organizing this, structuring, setting it up, the logistics of making it happen, and it over time builds into something good. And then you decide to take advantage of what you've tried to set up, which is an opportunity to earn more passive income. I guarantee you can call it greed, but I'm not judgmental in that way. I would say based on individual self-interest, I guarantee you they will start to think, what do I get out of this? Why am I paying as much as I am towards this arrangement, and so on. So you want to just disclose that up front and have an agreement. That would be part of the profile of who you're looking for. Someone who understands, yes, that's I'm perfectly fine with that agreement. I never plan to kick you out and take over, or if I do understand, here are the terms under which such an arrangement would be made. And it occurred to the person that I was speaking to, the co-founder, major stakeholder in this subletting practice, that we probably need to engage a corporate lawyer to help us figure out all of the different angles and put that in place. And I absolutely recommend that. And so don't do these things on a handshake agreement. And even if you're like, well, he's a really nice guy, and she is a great person. I've worked with her for many years, and I just trust them. That's great. We need that. But people don't see eye to eye. And just because people end up in a legal dispute doesn't mean one of the parties is evil or immoral or unethical. They just see things through different eyes. They have a different perspective on what is fair. So you need to spell it out in a legal agreement to begin with. So that was sort of the final piece of advice. I said, sounds like I got lots of homework. And the key there was, I said, now take notes. Like, what are your action items? And we spent some time going through the action items. For example, you've got to have that boundaries meeting, and you've got to sit down and redefine your objectives and ask, what are we really trying to accomplish here? And if you haven't done that for the business overall, this is a great time to do it. And then you need to create a profile. If you decide that, yes, it is a good opportunity, which was the whole question to begin with. Is this something I should pursue? If you decide, yes, this is something I should pursue, now you look at what is the best profile, what is the ideal candidate, and find the best one. Always look to the low-hanging fruit in your business. We created these action items, and go away and start checking these off, and then have me hold you accountable to deadlines when you're going to meet these things. If you bore with me through this anecdote for this long, then I gather that you understand this is not about healthcare. This is about business principles in general, and why it was easy for me to make these decisions where I'm not the primary stakeholder. I don't own the business that has to make these decisions. I'm looking at it from the outside in, but I'm referring to heuristics I have that help me to make quicker decisions with foundational principles. I kind of go through the Rolodex of experience in my brain and say, what things are likely to come up? And it really is helpful to engage somebody in this type of discussion who may see things that you don't see. Sometimes the opportunity is so great that you want to jump in with both feet or dive in head first, you choose your metaphor, and just move forward urgently and maybe a little rash. Instead, you want to make sure that you approach these things with an intelligent and rational point of view, always taking advantage of the basics of business, the business principles that will lead to your success. So that's where we'll leave it for today. I hope you got something out of this. Take that notepad and implement whatever you jotted down in your business today. Add some comments if you'd like me to elaborate on something, or if you have a case study, a business challenge you'd like me to evaluate and give you some advice on. Put something in the comments, reach out to us directly. We're happy to help. Let's learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.